Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm pleased to announce it's Wednesday today, and I've got engineer Mike Herzog with me again today. How's it going, Mike?
Hey, glad to be here, David. Glad to be here. It's
Always
nice,
glad to
nice,
have you.
beautiful day out there. Humidity is about to break for us. It's going to be a beautiful Labor Day weekend. It's good time to be here.
Nice. I was in Tulsa all weekend for a tennis tournament, and I played a 3 hour match. I played twice on Saturday, but one of the matches was 2 hours and 55 minutes,
Jeez.
and the heat index was 109, but that doesn't include the temperature on the court.
I was going to
That's like
say, what is
standing
it
in the middle of the street,
on the
and I was in
court?
direct sunlight. Yeah. So I did an IV treatment after the match where I got hooked up to an IV thing, and they ran fluids in me and all that. I was good for my next match later in the day.
But yeah, I mean that's an oven. You're standing on an oven. Yeah.
Yeah, so the heat certainly will get to you. I got a number of topics for us today. A couple are about BYD. One is about BYD in Mexico. One is about Ford's EV plans. One's about clean energy sector jobs. BYD in a new van that's a plug-in hybrid. Solar panel usage at U.S. schools. Rivian having a fire. Um, the xAI data center in Memphis is being accused of being overly polluting, and a new Lucid entry, and a way to make EVs more efficient to reduce their costs. So we're going to start out by talking about what's going on. This is a Reuters story. I always like to get those out of the way because they make my computer run really slow. So
Close the tab. Close the tab.
right, I want to close those out. But anyways, we're going to start out. We're going to talk about the story comes from Reuters. It's about Chinese EV maker BYD is eyeing different state incentives to put in a plant in Mexico. So while BYD isn't going to be making in the United States, they I saw something yesterday saying that BYD, I think it was according to JP Morgan, was saying that they expect BYD to be the world's third largest auto manufacturer within the next year and a half. And their sights are to eventually pass up Toyota.
Oh
And
wow.
they're currently number one in the world in plug-in hybrids, and they're number two in EVs.
And EVs.
They
Look at
don't they
that.
don't make pure gas cars.
Mhm.
So but BYD has narrowed its list of finalists for the location of a manufacturing plant in Mexico down to 3 states, and is reviewing a range of proposed incentives from them. Let's see if it gives us much. The plan is not only about having the space, but the logistics, all the development, urban infrastructure that has generated water, gas, everything that is needed for an automotive plants. When I lived in Tennessee, they had these areas that they called like these super zones or
Super sites.
something,
Yep.
super sites, and Ford has actually gone into one of them because there was a super site in West Tennessee, and that's where Ford has built the F-150 Lightning plant,
Yep.
and it had access to water, it had access to electricity, and this was a big issue, was having this already pre-set up. Do we do this in the Midwest?
We do. That's why Google's here. That's why Facebook's
Mhm.
here. Those were concentrated efforts. But these super sites are
Mhm.
huge. It's
Right.
a you bring everybody to the table and say, how's the water look? How's the power look? How's the land use look? What highway upgrades do we need? Rail, all of
Mhm.
those different things for these giant competitive bids. And it's mainly, I'd say mainly auto manufacturers, but data centers have slipped into that space too. The battery deals, I mean, those for a long time, and I think still, like when they're trying to cite battery production plants, that's another one that fits in those spaces. But they're definitely it is an effort because they want to come in day one. Like, I don't want to have to wait for this. I don't want to have to wait for that. What's your ramp up plan? And it is a community effort across a lot of different areas to set up super sites. But yeah, it's a big deal. I used to work on those quite a bit from the power side. Like, hey, what does this look like? how much can we handle, and that identifies what customers do you kind of court, and who can we fit here and who's a good fit.
So, BYD chief said that the plant will be centrally located in Mexico. Its Nuevo Leon state is an automotive hub, and its location of a proposed Tesla mega factory, also home to a new Volvo plant. And then another state, Central Puebla, has longhouse production for Volkswagen and BMW, or BMW makes EVs in nearby San Luis Potosi. And let's see. After unveiling BYD's Song Pro plug-in hybrid SUV in Mexico, the firm had not yet identified which models will be produced at the Mexico plant, but they're expecting to produce 150,000 units in the first stage and a further 150,000 in a second stage, and eventually growing it to 400 to 500,000 units per year. Yeah, it's pretty big. And of course, they're looking to serve the Mexican market, not really eyeing an entry into the US. The big thing with this is a lot of people say, well, if BYD is not coming into the US, why does anybody care? Well, the thing is, our auto manufacturers have been trying to manufacture and sell in these other
Yes, and it
nodes.
is for Central America and the Caribbean as an emerging market, and expanding automotive penetration. Like that's where BYD can make huge headways. I think can come into those spaces as a mainly a cost-effective option, right? I mean, it's cheap. You're going to get a cheap automobile, and those plug-in hybrids, man, like that's a good space to be in. I'll also say 6 months ago, or a year, gosh, we've been doing this for a year now. When we started talking about BYD, they were somewhere off in my periphery and radar. I've heard of them, but anymore, I talk to people. Yeah, I look into EVs, and BYD is a big one. Like, hey, I've heard of them. Like, what's the deal with them? Like, what's going on with BYD? So it's that comment of they're about to ramp up and take over some of these production spaces, even in a country where you can't sell them. I think it's just a testament that in the past year they are skyrocketing in popularity and in just awareness that this vehicle is out here, and it's not a bad little vehicle, or what they're trying to do with it.
So Canada just announced yesterday, we were reporting on this, that they're going to drop 100% tariff, just like the U.S. is, on Chinese-made EVs.
Interesting.
So
I was wondering where Canada fit into this space, but it sounds like they're following suit with us.
Yeah, I'm sure the White House had something to do with
that. Otherwise, why would Canada do that? I don't know.
Well, but Canada's big in auto manufacturing. They're a big part of the U.S. auto manufacturing business.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you look at it, a lot of the parts of Canada that border Michigan are, big in the automotive space, delivering parts to the big three. All right. So speaking of the big three, Ford slows EV plans, delaying pickup and axing a three-row SUV. They were advertising they were going to make a three-row SUV, a large SUV that was going to be like a bullet train. Of course, all the EVs are that way, right? They're all fast, but they're pushing back a new electric version of the F-150, and it's focused. They're trying to cut costs to stimulate demand. I don't know, cutting costs is enough to stimulate demand. I mean, they're already losing money. When Ford makes EVs, they haven't figured out yet how to get there to make money yet. Ford says it's adding a new electric midsize pickup and van to its future lineup as it doubles down on the strategy that is used in recent years, focusing on segments where it's already strong, pickups and commercial vehicles. Ford shares rose 1.1%. This wasn't a real big article, but you see Ford news, and you always just kind of wonder where they're going. Jim Farley's saying that the EV transition, a lot of it is people need to be willing to accept driving smaller, cheaper cars. And that's an interesting opinion, because Ford got away from it. GM has kept building cars, and stayed in that low dollar space.
Yeah.
And I don't know where Chrysler is in that space anymore, but it's just Ford got out of that. Ford went to only
Mhm.
vehicles that it could make money on, and now the EV transition is forcing them to rethink that, because there's starting to be a lot of not so expensive EVs coming into the market. Um, um, and I was going to say something else on the political spectrum. I'm not a big fan of our current government administration, except where it's come into the EV space and the clean energy space. And I thought this was good news. 142,000 U.S. clean energy jobs were added to the economy in 2023, double the rate of overall jobs. Coal jobs fell by 8,500 or 5.3% as power generation continues to switch from coal to gas, wind, and solar.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the coal production is it's so far down, and it just continues to go down. So that's not surprising. But if I was talking to a young person, or even somebody looking to retool, on their career and what they want to do, that clean energy space, solar development, rooftop solar, ground mount solar, uh, shoot, even become an EV mechanic. I don't know if you call him a mechanic or you call him an electrician or somebody who would work on an EV, but getting your foot in the door in that space right now, when you still have time before there's a glut on the market of those and they start to have issues or need repairs like this, that's what I'd push people towards.
so we had a guy on that came on and talked about educational opportunities in the EV charging space and
Mhm.
jobs. And he was saying you've got an electrician that can be certified on EV charging, and non-electricians that can be certified on EV charging. And the non-electricians, their he expected their annual pay to be around 75,000.
Yeah.
And I thought that for a non-electrician, that's really good. And
Yeah, not having to go through the whole process and journeyman and apprentice and
right.
master and all of that. That's a great career track.
Yeah, and I thought that was really encouraging. There's going to be a lot. Obviously, that's going to be a growing field. There's going to be a lot more need for people to go out and fix charging stations. But I just thought I would kind of throw that in there before I get to yet another article about BYD. Once again, it's like who's BYD? And for folks who don't know, um, Omaha's Berkshire Hathaway owns, was it 8% of BYD, or
Remember, but
it might have been a little
they're
bigger at one point. Yeah, anyways, so this is kind of camouflage, but they're making a minivan. 124 miles on electric power. So this is a plug-in hybrid. BYD is a world leader in plug-in hybrid sales, and 124 miles on electric before it would switch over to gas. And that's a really long range, because almost all plug-in hybrids seem to be around this 30 to 40 mile
Mhm.
range. There's been a few that were only like 16 or something, or just ridiculously small, but it's not a real long range usually. This one obviously will go a lot farther, and heavily camouflaged with a white and light blue wrapping. Dimensions already appear quite large. It'll exceed 5 meters in length with a wheelbase that'll be at least 3 meters. Well, that'll be at least a comfortable ride. It's
Yeah,
interesting kind of see it being secretive here and hiding its shape, but it's obviously a
it's a big
minivan of some
van.
sort.
That's a
Yeah,
big van.
yeah, expected to seat 2+2+3.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and let me see. It'll have only a 1.5-liter turbo petrol engine, maximum output of 156. What would PS be?
PS.
Yeah, it says it has a maximum output of 156 PS with a
Ooh,
272 PS electric motor. That's a measurement I'm not
I don't
familiar
know what
with.
PS is. Pounds per. I don't something. No idea. I don't think I've heard of that.
I don't want to speculate what it
No.
means. But once again, it's coming in a price around, well, here it goes, about 32,000 euros or 27,000 pounds. Obviously this is from a UK article, but that would
See,
still.
that's kind of interesting. I mean, I know the flagship minivans, Toyota Sienna, Honda Odyssey.
Mhm.
Um, they're more in 40s, 50s. Maybe top out at 60s if you get all the bells and
Right.
whistles. But even seeing that price point from a BYD vehicle seems high to me. Compared to some of their other offerings where it's just we're going to cut the floor out of this market and flood it with a cheap vehicle. Like, it's cheaper than other vans, but it's not. You don't go like, holy cow, like that. Those are going to fly off the shelves. I mean, that's still got a decent price point to it.
Well, maybe. I know that in, what is it, the Pacifica? So Pacifica, the Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid has about a 40 something mile, around 40 mile plug-in range. And those things, you really can't find them used for less than about 40,000.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I'm just saying that, and it's kind of the same thing, that Toyota Sienna hybrid. We've talked about that before because it's got such great gas mileage at 36 mpg. Those used are really hard to find anything below about 35. So this one's priced new.
Right in that space.
So I'd still, but once again, we're talking about, is this the price in the UK or is this the price in China? Because the price in China, as we've seen, there's that one really cheap BYD that's $10,000 there, but it's 20,000 in pretty much every other country by the time they add on their VAT and everything else. So in some United States, we talk about 100% tariffs. In a lot of countries, they just have a VAT that might be 50% at each stage that the vehicle moves through the supply chain. And so they may not call it a tariff. It really depends on the country, but I know there's a lot of European countries that automatically almost all goods that are imported are pretty much double the cost just from adding the VAT and some import fees. So it's really different to speculate, because the United States has been very big on free trade for quite a long time now, and we really don't have high sales taxes. So we really, other countries kind of tag people in a lot of different places along the value chain.
Where can we keep adding?
And so the U.S. tends to get people more on federal and state income tax and property tax, and maybe on some of your vehicle, renewal fees each year for your licenses, whereas other countries tend to go real heavy into both the tariffs and this value added tax, which is when the product is first manufactured and sold to a store. That store may pay some enormous, anywhere from 25 to 50% fee. The only place I really see this in the U.S. is in the marijuana industry. In like Washington State, they charge something like 50% tax from the farm to this dispensary, and then like another 50% sales tax from the dispensary to the end user. I know in California, the taxes are so high on weed that 2/3 of all weed sold in the state is black market still.
It's still under the radar.
Because people don't want to pay the taxes on the weed. There's some disconnects there. When you see an industry like that, that there was almost all laws are passed with good intentions, right? And sometimes it's hard to really realize where the fallout's going to be. And then a lot of times it's really hard to go back and fix things. And they've really got issues with that. All right. So let's move on to our next topic, which is solar power at U.S. schools. And this isn't something I'd really thought about. Maybe this is a big deal in the West Coast, for instance, or, in Arizona, maybe. But this makes a lot of sense here. So they've got these school buses here pictured under solar panels, because I think this is great. I think if you're going to have, an apartment complex is going to have charging and stuff like that, I think it's great to have these to cool off vehicles for carports, things like that. It makes a lot of sense. But since 2014, in a 10-year span, solar capacity at kindergarten through 12th grade schools has more than quadrupled across the U.S. I don't know if that really is a big deal or not.
What number did you start with?
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Still nothing.
One school had panels in 2014, and now 4 do. No, I don't really know.
No, I don't want to poo-poo on it because it's a good thing. I think this is a very good thing. But it's
Oh, 1 in 9 students attend schools powered by solar.
wow.
In 2023 alone, 800 schools added solar panels. That meant that at least one school went solar every single day during the 22-23 school year. Let me see. K through 12 schools generated 1,800 megawatts of solar power, enough to power 330 households or the entire city of Denver.
That's cool.
The top states are California, New Jersey, Arizona, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. Guess I didn't expect to see Massachusetts and Connecticut on that list.
The Northeast has adopted a lot quicker than one would think with solar.
Okay.
I used to do a whole lot of studies in Maine, and you would think, God, Maine, like, isn't it pretty far north? It gets pretty dark out there. And it's what the most heavily forested state we have. But still, they went gangbusters for it. And I think it has to do with some of the market rules and everything like that. But yeah, the Northeast has gone crazy with this, more so than one might think. But schools, from a solar investment standpoint, it makes a ton of sense. They're big buildings. They're flat. There's a lot of opportunity for grants or resources to help supplement the cost, and it is not going anywhere. I mean, you build a school, that school is going to be there 50 years, 100 years. I mean, you're not
Right.
going to do a whole heck of a lot with it. So this recuperation of recovering your upfront costs, like, yeah, I can wait 15 years, like, because this isn't going to go anywhere.
Right.
And it insulates against rising energy costs. So it's at a minimum. It's like we can just, yeah, it's still going to be a school. It's still going to sit there. We're still going to own it. It's not going to change hands or anything like that. It makes a lot of sense from that perspective.
We were talking about green energy jobs earlier, and in Wayne County in West Virginia, which is an area that's historically dependent on coal, they're installing 10,000 solar panels next year. They're going to offer apprenticeships to high school students, giving them hands-on experience in installing solar panels on their own campuses.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's get in the trades, get that skill down. I mean, that's a really good thing.
Let me see. Yeah, I just thought that something, we've talked about other things like police forces going, 100% electric and different things like that. I just thought that was kind of a cool piece. All right, we're about to get on to everybody's favorite EV topic. Let's see here. I'll go ahead and share this. This is always number one on the internet.
Big ball of fire.
Yeah.
Big ball of fire.
As humans, we are in love with fire. Fire is one of the greatest inventions of all time. Okay. 50 Rivian EVs damaged in factory parking lot fire. R1S and R1T vehicles reportedly waiting to be shipped to customers and caught on fire. Let's see. This was in Normal, Illinois. The cause remains unknown. Let's see if it gives us any information. Normal Fire Department came out on Saturday night. The plant will eventually be manufacturing the upcoming R2. The plant was not affected by the fire. Okay, let's see. Oh, we even get a little bit of video here. Let's see if it.
We got it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Let me see here. Oh, yeah. That looks like a fire, all right. Yeah. Oh, there's fire trucks. That's more proof there's a fire. Nobody got hurt, but it is a pretty cool looking fire. So don't let it be said we don't show videos of fires at EV World News. Yeah, let's see. The fire was put out. The crews remain on scene to monitor the area. No injuries reported. 57 vehicles were contained in a corner that were damaged in one way or another. Still unknown what caused the fire. Well, that's a damn shame. They weren't being charged. the fire was definitely unrelated to the high voltage batteries.
Okay.
Who knows? Well,
So wait a
you
minute.
have
The title
suspicion.
of the article, it was "Here's what happened," and then they don't say what happened.
Right, they don't say what happened. Well,
Here's what happened. We actually don't know what happened.
I know. I kid Bill about this a lot of times. We get 150 plus new articles on EV World every day, and a whole lot of them don't say anything. I mean,
Mhm.
basically the title was enough, you know,
Yeah.
and in that case, title was less than enough.
Yeah.
Really, here's what we know. We don't know anything.
No, they weren't charging, and it wasn't the batteries.
But it definitely was a
Batteries
fire.
didn't
We verified it was a fire.
establish. Yep, there was a
I
big
love all the
cloud.
time. I've seen people say, "Oh, I've seen 2 EV fires in the last month," and it's like, "You have?" It's like I highly doubt that. I've, seen. I might see a gas fire every year. You probably saw 2 gas fires and just assume they were EV because it sounded cool. But
Mhm.
yeah,
I know
all right.
we've talked about this so many times, but I always think it's worth repeating. 15 years ago, lithium ion batteries, like there was an issue. It was figuring out how to charge them. Cheap,
Mhm.
hoverboards, other, disposable vape pens, things like that that use cheap batteries. Yeah, it's still not good from a car perspective. They figured it out. They've
Yeah,
changed manufacturing. They've changed the way everything's connected. Like, okay, yeah, here's what was causing those fires. It was a thing. And still, if you're in a bad accident and some of the casing's damaged, yeah, maybe. But true for a combustion vehicle too. Yeah,
I
if you get
forgot
in an
about
accident,
hoverboards catching on fire. Yeah, that was a thing.
yeah, and
Um,
it was a thing, but it's 15 years later and it's figured out. They've addressed a lot of these issues.
Yeah. All right. So next, we're going to go on to a story that is kind of surprising. It's not really about electric vehicles or green energy. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. Elon Musk's xAI accused of worsening Memphis smog with unauthorized gas turbines at data center. Now, environmental advocates say they're running gas turbines to power its data center and emitting air pollutants without authorization. Well, I don't know exactly what all goes into that authorization
I,
or
I,
whatever.
I can step in on that one. I'll go ahead and say
Sure.
who didn't authorize, because before you put in any type of power plant, it goes through not just grid connection and how all of that works, but EPA siting studies. I mean, fueling siting studies, all kinds of approvals to get anything like that put into place. It goes through emissions testing. It goes through annual inspection. So just saying it would be hard to sneak in a power plant somewhere, or a large gas turbine that can produce 10 to 15 megawatts and just flip the switch without anybody knowing about it. So
They
that's
act
just
like they didn't
my
have any
input.
permits.
Yeah, having been involved in a lot of power plant siting and issues, and been exposed to putting up a wind turbine and getting every migratory bird path, figured out. You can't just put in a power plant and then get mad when somebody actually runs it. So, well, you
Yeah.
weren't authorized to run it.
As somebody who's remodeled 100 homes, built homes in the Memphis market over the years, now I haven't lived there for 10 years now, but lots of people did a lot of unpermitted work there. But I have a hard time somebody put in 18 gas turbines to burn natural gas without getting a permit. Some of this just seems, it's like, well, who was supposed to authorize that? Was the city council supposed to authorize it? It was, you know, I'm not sure exactly what that means when somebody says it wasn't authorized. I have a hard time believing they did it without it being permitted and with the local utility, which is called Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, not knowing about it. Now, here it says here, Memphis already had a major smog problem, and the county where the xAI data center is located received an F grade from the American Lung Association for its poor air quality. Now, I lived in Memphis for 20 years. Poor air quality is not something I remember from there. So, Omaha definitely doesn't have poor air quality compared to Memphis, but it really, never struck me because it wasn't a major manufacturing facility or
Mhm.
manufacturing area. It had been at one time, like say before the 1995,
Mhm.
but since then, all the manufacturers are pretty much shut down. It was pretty much all distribution. You have FedEx based there. You have
Yeah.
very large
Right.
trucking companies based there. They now have, since I moved, they've added a 4 million square foot Amazon facility. It was already a big distribution facility for Nike, had two big facilities there. And there's some others there, but let's see where this goes on. So they're being accused by environmental health advocates of adding to the pollution by using natural gas burning turbines at its new data center and doing so without a permit. Not sure what that permit might involve, but it was a former Electrolux factory. It had raised 6 billion at a 24 billion valuation for xAI as far as increasing this. They had begun training its AI models at the facility using 100,000 of NVIDIA's H100 processors. Now, the Southern Environmental Law Center sent a letter this year to the health department, a letter this week to the health department in Shelby County, which is where Memphis is located, and to a regional office of the EPA on behalf of several local groups, asking regulators to investigate xAI for its unpermitted use of turbines and the pollution they create. They have installed at least 18 gas combustion turbines over the last several months, with more potentially on the way. Um, its long-term plan is to use power from the local utility, and that utilities said it started providing 50 megawatts of power at the beginning of August. However, the facility requires an additional 100 megawatts.
Mhm.
Utility has installed more circuit breakers and started making improvements to transmission lines in the area to prepare for the added power consumption as well.
And this
And
is so that's common. I mean, that's something that will happen. We've talked about it before, where EVs will get a lot of the rap of increasing demand on the grid, but it's data centers. That's really the culprit that's happening, and it's a supply chain. Hey, we don't have the power for you today, and they go back to the drawing board. Hey, we want to figure this out. Well, let's make our own. And then long term, all of those combustion turbines they're putting in are going to serve as backup for long term. Hey, if something happens to the grid, we can keep running. Or a lot of utilities will offer long term, curtailment or use of that generation. So in a capacity constrained power market, generation's a great asset. I mean, that is a very positive thing they're putting in. It's just that's where I keep going back to of this is a cookie cutter. Yeah, we build a data center. We're going to put in some generation to bridge the gap until we get our full power demand, and then we're going to keep that generation um, on there and available for emergency purposes. Maybe that's the rub. Maybe they pitched it as said, hey, these are backup emergency generators only, and they're using them to supplement their operation at this point. So maybe that's the way they were permitted differently, but even in those cases, you're allowed so many hours of runtime per year, and as long as they're not exceeding their hours of runtime per year, then I don't know where you can pick fault with it from
no,
the process.
well, they're saying in this that the turbines in place have the capacity to emit an additional 130 tons of nitrogen oxides annually, which rank them as the ninth largest source of the pollutants in that county. Their combined capacity could power 50,000 homes. Now, we know that uses a lot of damn power draw, and Musk has even said that there's going to start being problems. But supposedly, Musk-led companies have a history of building facilities or operating high emissions equipment without obtaining permits first. SpaceX operated a water deluge and cooling system at its launch facility in Boca Chica, Texas, repeatedly discharging industrial wastewater there without a permit. And there's been similar issues with the Boring Company, and Tesla had something in 21 for modifying paint shop equipment without a permit. I don't
Yeah.
know. Some of that seems a little, you know, nitpicky,
And,
but
maybe in 3 weeks we'll be eating our words on this and say, oh
yeah,
crap, they really did sneak those in there and put them on. But I just my experience in these
yeah,
processes, it would be pretty dang hard to sneak 18 of them in there and just
Well,
run them without doing anything.
the thing is, there was people issuing permits along the way for the electrical people to come in there, the plumbing people to come in and hook up the natural gas and all that. So it does seem a little odd that that is what they're going after.
Maybe it's the case everything's gummed up and bureaucracy and red tape, and they're waiting for a final stamp, and they cranked them on for a couple of days without having that final letter of approval, and that's what people are taking umbrage with. I don't know. You know, well, maybe there's more that's going to unfold from that, or maybe it's just.
I'm sure we'll hear more about this.
Yeah, if you're trying to protect your community and you think this is the pollution source, great, like go for it. But if it's just we don't like it, and now we're gonna file a lawsuit against it, that's different, because there's permitting processes in place to figure all that stuff out, which I would have a hell of a time believing or not believing that they followed those processes for a facility that big that they're banking on for this function in this business stream.
You would think. All right, so let's move on to Lucid. So we haven't talked about Lucid for a while.
Luxury automobile maker Lucid.
Yes, and most of their Lucid Airs were designed not to compete with Tesla so much, but more to compete with like a Mercedes-Benz EQS, something along the lines. It's going to be $150,000 car, super luxury, all electric cars. Lucid does have an edge in their technology in that they've been able to make cars that get 5 miles of range per kilowatt hour, which is unique. And now they're developing a sub $50,000 mid-size crossover to rival the Chevy Blazer EV, which I'm not sure. That's a strange title, I thought, for this article. And this news came to us from GM Authority. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because I really don't see it as something to compete with the Blazer EV. I would see it as being something more to try to compete with the Model Y. But it's part of the automaker's strategy to broaden its market appeal. Well, apparently one of the things is Lucid came to the market, and there just aren't enough people who want a $150,000 sedan EV luxury car, and that's presented challenges for them. And they're looking at coming in with an SUV. I'm sure it'll be super nice for that $50,000. It's just a matter of what they can, kind of provide in that range. But it's saying it's not only supposed to be a competitor to the Chevy Blazer, but also the Rivian R2 and even the Cadillac Lyriq. Now, the Lyriq is a little more expensive. It's probably around $60,000. But I thought that was kind of fascinating, because the article doesn't even mention trying to compete with the Model Y. So, yeah, go figure with that, because it doesn't really make sense when you're trying to, because the Blazer is kind of down in the low end of the Chevy. Well, Chevy doesn't really have a lot of EVs other than the expensive trucks and then the Bolt. Yeah, and
I agree with you. It's luxury sedan, economy SUV. If that's their strategy and they've evaluated and say, hey, here's a untapped market space, or we think we can retool whatever and put this vehicle out here. Good pivot, if that's what it is. But from your and my outside perspective, like that's
it's like, why?
Yeah. Like, why, if your brand is luxury, compete with, the electric Hummer, compete with, put a Escalade equivalent out there, a Navigator equivalent out there that's all electric in that space. I don't know.
Well, look at Rivian. So Rivian has the R1S, which to me is designed to compete with Range Rover, because it even looks like a Range Rover, right? And it's a little bit bigger, it's a little faster, it's a little cheaper than a Range Rover. And then they've got the R1T, which is their truck. And now they've got this R2, which is a less expensive SUV coming to market. And they've already taken over 100,000 pre-orders for it.
Mhm.
And you look at the overwhelming success of the the Tesla Model Y being the best-selling car in the world, and I could see people wanting to enter that space. Tesla has figured something out there, and it's really taking a lot for other people to jump into that space and to come up with something competitive. Now, I've got a last article for today, and this one is almost a little comical, but it's making EVs efficient could reduce their cost by almost $5,000. Now, one of the things we've talked about this a lot in terms of GM. GM has these big ass batteries in all their trucks that are over 200 kilowatt hours. And sure, you could shave that, but I mean, the price of batteries is coming down. So I think if
Mhm.
anything, you may see more going the other way, that where battery sizes may get ridiculous as prices keep plummeting. But this was getting onto the point of, if you lowered the weight of the vehicles by maybe cutting the size of the batteries in half, not only would you cut a huge amount of the price, but you'd get more efficiency from the battery. And you got a lot of this where we were talking about Lucid makes the most efficient um, in the heavier weight EVs. When I say
Mhm.
heavier weight, because there are some EVs that only have, say, a 10 to 20 kilowatt hour battery, which is really small comparatively. It might weigh a couple hundred pounds versus 1,000 pounds
Mhm.
of these 100 kilowatt hour batteries. But there was a study done that showing you could cut EV costs by $5,000. But the press release mentions the Hummer EV as an example of an inefficient EV. The Hummer EV gets like 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour, but the gas powered Hummer gets like 10 miles per
10,
gallon on a
like
good day.
less than 10. I mean, I
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
So,
I should, you know what? Once again, I'm poking fun at a lot of these today, but you look at that and calling out the electric Hummer as an inefficient vehicle is that, and
right. And you can.
yes, we know that that's been established. What else? What else you got for me?
Yeah, well, I thought it was interesting, but as batteries keep coming down in price, I don't know that you're really going to see battery sizes getting shaved. I think you're probably going to keep seeing a little bit less efficiency where we start going down to 3 kilowatt hours. The Teslas, I think the Model 3 is like 3.7 kilowatt or
Mhm.
3.7 miles per kilowatt hour, and the Model Y is 3.5, or it's 3.4. It's 3.4 and 3.9. It's 3.9. So the Model 3 is almost at 4. But um, here we go. An inefficient 9,000 pound GMC Hummer EV only gets 1.4. Are there other EVs with similarly low efficiency? 9,000 pounds, man.
Nine.
Um,
Oof. You got to be careful driving over bridges. In some places, if you're out in the country with that thing, that's
well,
you might actually have to pay attention.
there's a new Cadillac Escalade EV coming out. It's going to have a 450-mile range.
Mhm.
I'm sure it's going to have a
Yeah,
200, you know,
just yeah.
kilowatt hour battery under that thing. It's probably also going to be 9,000 pounds.
No, and
Um,
it's good. It's good to see all of these almost I'd call them like balance of system improvements where people are coming through like, hey, we know what we have with batteries. There's ways to make more efficient. There's ways to optimize, but tighten up everything else. Tighten up everything else in your process. You're going to see these go down. I'm sure over time there's going to be a sweet spot where it's all right. This is how people actually drive these vehicles. Like we don't need to put in this giant battery pack. People don't use it. It doesn't come up. Back in early adoption days when everybody was afraid of range anxiety, sure, bigger is better, more mileage, more batteries. But I feel like over time, even in the next couple of years, as there's much more driving habit data associated with these, there's going to be a sweet spot. And your stand, you want this, your mini, you want this, your big honking truck or SUV. This is where things are going to standardize out, and it's going to be driven by habit, and then we'll retool for that and optimize designs based on those. But it's just, yeah,
Well,
I don't know. Yeah, make things more efficient. We want to see that.
well,
Reduce cost.
supposedly solid state batteries are going to bring a much greater energy density for the weight. But at what cost? How much more
Mhm.
expensive are those going to be to produce? Okay. And then the other thing is we're eventually going to see sodium ion batteries, which are going to be less energy dense than what we have now. They're going to produce more weight. You're probably going to have less range per kilowatt hour, but it's probably going to be cheaper to produce.
Yep.
It's going to get really cheap. And since the primary cost of an EV is the battery, that's,
Mhm.
once you keep getting that at a ridiculously low price, you're just going to see more economies of scale and cheaper electric vehicles. Anyways, Mike, that's all I had for today. We went on for about 45 minutes, folks.
Good. That was a wide range of topics. That was a good one today.
It was. I saved some because sometimes Bill gives and I have like a million topics. I'm like, hey, I'm saving some of these for tomorrow with Mike. Yeah. So,
Works for me.
anyways, all right. Well, folks, thanks for sticking in to the end with us, and we'll be back next week.